Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. All right, all right. My name is Greg Porter. I'm chair of the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative Board. And on behalf of the board, we want to welcome you today to a day that happened about 49 years ago, in which we lost a great individual in our community in these United States, Robert Kennedy. Again, on behalf of the board, and our board members are here, and I want to acknowledge our board of the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative, the ones that are working hard to move this park and move this community forward. The 7 other communities that lie within this hub of this great side of town. We have David Dreyer, who's here today. Our other board members that are present also today are Ann Laker, Ashley Gerwitz, John Elliott, Jan Diggins, Cheryl Richardson, Cam Radford, Roderick Wheeler, and Chuck Williams is also here this afternoon. Give them a round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Those are individuals that are working in regards to the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative. But also, we want to take a pause for another board member who transitioned this past week, Greg Perry, a lifelong supporter. The work behind me, he had his hands in it. If you look at the monument here, he not only put it together, but he contributed to it. And a board member who is very diligent and loved this community. Greg has transitioned, and we'd like to take a moment of silence to acknowledge his friends and his family, because our hearts are heavy. So if I ask you for a moment of silence for Greg Perry. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. He really enriched our lives. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative, a nonprofit organization here in Indianapolis, where it's historically known for the speech that Robert Kennedy presented here on April 4th, 1968, the night Martin Luther King was assassinated. We were here tonight on the 6th to honor the untimely death of this incredible individual, this renowned senator, and a great leader within these United States. We want to keep this unique moment of history alive as we use to address the issues of divisiveness and injustice in our society. Think of the words of Robert Kennedy. Using the ideals, ladies and gentlemen, of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, that's the basis of the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative, working to diminish racial conflict, address division and injustice, and encourage the action and strength of our community. As our mayor says, we talk about one city. So in 2018, many cities across the country will come together to observe Martin Luther King's assassination, but Indianapolis is a unique spot to remember the historical speech of Robert Francis Kennedy, given that night here in this park. On April 4th of 2018 will be the 50th anniversary of that historic speech. And we invite you to come back and put it on your radar screen, set your calendar for April 4th of 2018. We will have Carrie Kennedy here, daughter of Senator Robert Kennedy. We will have our own Andre Carson here, as well as we've invited John Lewis. The 50th anniversary is on the horizon, and this is our moment to make sure that individuals never forget about Dr. King and never forget about Robert Kennedy. We have great partners in this, and with the Historical Society and other groups, community-based organizations throughout the city. So put that on your radar screen, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad to have you here today, and we look forward to continue working with each and every one of you as we preserve the knowledge base and preserve the wisdom and preserve the thoughts of the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative, because we still reach we still reach for our community. At this time, I'd like to present to you the hardest working mayor in the United States, a mayor that kayaks to work, a mayor that walks to work, a mayor that drives to work, a mayor that bikes to work. And I'm looking for him to be able to fly and drop down with that parachute to work. That's on the horizon. An individual who really has our city at heart. An individual who loves our city, loves our community, and loves each and every one of you. He doesn't stop talking and working with you on various issues that affect our community. One city, one great mayor, Mayor Hobson.
Well, good evening. And I'm indeed honored to be with all of you on this glorious June evening as we gather not only to remember but to commemorate the life and the legacy of Robert F. Kennedy. But as we gather, we also do so to replenish ours. Indeed, his was a spirit of great promise. As a public figure, many considered him to be a man of contradiction, even while expressing deep compassion for his fellow human beings. He was often criticized as ruthless and confrontational. Ultimately, however, Robert Kennedy dedicated his life to seeking answers to the profound questions of his time, many of which remain unanswered to this day. For our society still suffers under the savageness of man. But Robert Kennedy was the exception to the rule, just as Indianapolis was an exception to the rage that consumed our country on that infamous night, thanks in no small measure to Senator Kennedy's calming cadence here in this place, in this park. Hope rippled, peace persisted, Indianapolis stood steadfast. Still we stand to this day. I was an adolescent then. April 4, 1968 places me in Rushville, Indiana, as does June 6th of that same year. Some of you were also quite young then. Many of you had not yet been born into this world. But no matter where the past places you, here we are on this evening in Kennedy King Park in Indianapolis. These grounds remain to this day a sacred place, a place impenetrable to the passage of time, forever the embodiment of Indianapolis's true potential, and the very cornerstone of our city's legacy of peace. In this ceremony, we reflect in our minds, we remember in our lives, we carry on. Yes, Robert Kennedy was a complex man, but he was of a complex country in a complex time. Perhaps that is why he is one of the greatest symbols of that time. Perhaps that is why we still strive to carry the torch which he so courageously yielded. Because if we, like him, hold fast to the light in spite of the darkness, then we too will always find our way. I believe that. We too will always find peace. We too will always find Bobby Kennedy. May God bless our path as we forge ahead. I thank you.
Some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens, people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and killed.
Stare into the eyes of those who fear for you, who died and drove the cause and steered towards you. Two men shared a dream that we too should believe, and strive to keep the dream alive and keep us interweaved. 44 years ago, RFK spoke the word. Both black and white people thought they never would have heard. All the king wanted was for people just to get along, but ended up getting killed through all the hatred and run along. When bad things took a turn for the worse, RFK got gunned down on unfamiliar turf. Years later, someone said, let's build a monument in MLK and RFK's honor, so don't you squander it. Over $3 million was donated to the special cause. Be surprised how much money was spent, so there should be no flaws. A marker near the site was full of confiscated weapons, and somehow artists know how to spread the message. Same for RFK, when life becomes a swirl, to tame the savageness of men and make gentle life of this world. Next time you spread the love instead of the hate, tell the story of two good men, and maybe they'll start a clean slate. Look and stare into the eyes of 40 fear for you, who died and drove the cause and steered towards you. Two men shared the dream that we too should believe, and try to keep the dream alive and keep us interweave.
It was the first time many of you were senator on that night. We stand together the way for your children life. King's quest for peace was ended in Memphis, and the senator took a 22 on his run for president. For both men, the purpose of each breath was replicated. For both were taken early, chosen, lives outbroken, and dedication. The perpetual reach does not have to mean limits. Join in, keep heart. Forget not the words spoken. To you two, impeach prejudice, severance, and division. Be anything but timid in your respect and your recognition. Now address them and give them life by making it a mirror. Making it a mirror will make their reaches longer. The mission shared by these, justice to those that suffer, love and wisdom and compassion towards one another.
Look and stare into the eyes of those who fear for you, who died and drove the cause and steered towards you. Two men shared the dream that we too should believe, and try to keep the dream alive, and then we interweave.
That's Michael Williams. Michael Williams. Michael Williams. He just graduated from Heron High School. He's very active in the Harrison Arts Center and writes stories and poems and raps about neighborhoods in Indianapolis, and he's on his way to college. So thank you, Michael. We got our eyes on you. Thank you. I'm Judge Dave Dreyer with the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative. Before we move on with our program, I want to remind you of two things. One is our Executive Director, Amy DiStallo. Where are you, Amy? Amy, I wanted to make sure there she's right there. Thank you very much. She's the person who helps us and helps our organization very much. I want to make sure we mention her. Thanks, Amy. I also want to remind you that our program consists of this warm program we have every year, and also we're going to continue by transitioning eventually over for some water and to have a reading from about the Speak Truth to Power play from RFK Human Rights Organization with a VIP list of readers. So look in your program and follow us over there in just a few minutes. To continue with our program, I'm going to introduce a very special person to you, a person that's special to the city, to this event, to the history of this event, in our study of Robert Kennedy, and to the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative. He's a documentary filmmaker. He comes from an extensive background of journalism and of broadcasting and directing and producing in TV and radio. He eventually became a faculty member at Anderson University and has taught and mentored scores of students in filmmaking and in journalism, in TV and radio broadcasting, many of whom have gone on to great careers, including here at the Heartland Film Festival and other places. Most importantly, he founded Covenant Productions at Anderson, and he is the producer of the Emmy award-winning film Ripple of Hope. And some of you I know that film. It premiered here April 4th, and it is the film about this event, about this speech, about Robert Kennedy's experience here and the influence and inspiration that it affected on that day and continues to have. To us, he is our expert about this event, about the speech, and about this space. He has continued to work and continued to receive countless awards and Emmy nominations. He's still making films for his group, the Mostas Films. He is always seeking powerful, and this is a quote, powerful pro-social stories with themes of redemption, personal courage, and transformation. What better description of Robert Kennedy and the event of the speech here and our history and the story that we at Kennedy King try to tell all the time to everybody. So please welcome Mr. Donald Boggs.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks to all of you who've gathered here today 49 years after the death of Robert F. Kennedy. Truly, this is hallowed ground, and I'm honored to be speaking here near the spot where Robert Kennedy spoke to us after the death of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I never met Robert Kennedy. I was not here in 1968, but I spent a year researching his life and his speech in Indianapolis while directing the film A Ripple of Hope. I had the opportunity to interview over 50 people, including John Lewis, Frank Mankiewicz, Bob Kennedy's press secretary, his chief speechwriter Adam Walensky, his advance man, and many others who were here that rainy night in April. And as I look about the crowd here, I see a number of people who were also here that evening. All the people who spoke to me without exception said that Robert Kennedy was an honest man who was not afraid of the truth, who felt the responsibility of being a citizen, who understood his obligation to listen to others less fortunate than himself, a person who, as his younger brother Ted said, saw wrong and tried to right it. We honor him today. Later in the editing of the documentary film, I came into the edit bay one day where one of my colleagues, who was born the year that Robert Kennedy died, was sitting silently at the monitors. On the largest screen there was what we call raw news footage, unedited film of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. It was about 2 hours long. And my colleague had just finished watching that, something he knew nothing about. He only knew about Robert Kennedy and the speech here and his earlier life. And when I entered the room, he turned to me, and through his tears, he said, "I had no idea." During the documentary process, he had come to know Robert F. Kennedy vicariously and was mourning his personal loss of a man that he had never met, never seen. Those 4 small words, "I had no idea," spoke deeply to me about younger generations and the need to remember RFK and what he stood for. And tonight is a time to do so and commemorate his life. As you know well, on April 4th, 1968, many here were angry, as well as saddened, at the death of Martin Luther King Jr. And some of those people here were prepared to violently respond. Kennedy had come here to have a campaign rally, but instead he found within himself the virtues which enabled him to be an instrument of love, empathy, and peace. In a potentially volatile situation, he did not condemn the pain that breeds violence and revenge, but shared his personal pain at the also violent loss of his older brother, John F. Kennedy. He faced the realities of deep emotion, and those present here knew that he understood their own feelings. He did understand their anger, and did not criticize the anger as inappropriate. To do so would have been typical for a privileged, rich white man in 1968, and perhaps even so today. But he did not. He simply said, "So I shall ask you tonight to return home, to say a prayer for the family of Martin Luther King, that's true, but more importantly, to say a prayer for our own country, which all of us love, a prayer for understanding and that compassion of which I spoke." Now, I must tell you that I'm amazed, simply amazed by the latter portion of that sentence. To say a prayer for the family of Martin Luther King, that's true, but more importantly, to say a prayer for our own country. What RFK was saying was, yes, pray for King's family, but our country is more important. Now, who else would dare say such a thing? Might it create more anger in the crowd that was here? But Robert Kennedy was not afraid to speak the truth. In his mind, the country was more important than King, and more important than his own brother, John F. Kennedy. He also understood that people have a choice. He told the crowd that peacefully going home and praying was the moral thing to do, but ultimately, they got to choose. And they did. They did the right thing. There were no riots, no loss of life, no injuries, no property damage in Indianapolis. Goodness begets goodness. In April 2009, A Ripple of Hope premiered at the Paley Center in Manhattan with Robert Kennedy's wife, Ethel, and two of their daughters, Carrie and Rory, in attendance, along with Martin Sheen and many others. I sat next to Carrie in the front row while the film screened. There was a moment in the documentary when Kennedy, in 1966, undertakes a Senate trip investigating hunger in the Mississippi Delta. The conditions among sharecroppers were deplorable. Children with open sores which would not heal. Diseases one would never see in other parts of the United States. Malnutrition and more. It affected Kennedy deeply. All the more so because it reminded him of his own children. Upon his return home that night, he met his own children at the door, Carrie included, and he said to them, "What I saw today was unacceptable, and you have to do something." As I sat next to Carrie during that scene, I couldn't help but notice her reaction was a visceral one. And as I reflect on Kennedy's words to his children, and Carrie was only 7 years old at the time, I think, well, this could be a guilt trip for these children. After all, they're only children. What are they supposed to do? Shouldn't he at least give them some specifics on this? But then I think his life, his words, his actions were a model for his children. Again, the children had a choice. And indeed, Carrie and the other Kennedys have chosen to do something. And in Carrie's case, as Judge Dreyer mentioned, you'll hear some of her words in the play Speak Truth to Power at 7 p.m. Sometimes in the midst of violence and anger, the best thing we can do is to go home and pray, to reflect, to calm down, to find peace. But other challenges, even ones that make us angry, require us to respond, not in violence, but in pro-social action. So if Robert Kennedy were here today, in these challenging times, political divisiveness, racial and ethnic prejudice which continues still, terrorism, what words would he have for us? What would he ask of us today? And I'm confident that he would ask us to do something. I doubt that he would give us specifics. We'd need to figure it out for ourselves. But let me suggest a guideline, though. Where your talents and the needs of the world meet, there lies the something you need to be doing. And I realize that largely I'm preaching here to the choir. I'm grateful for your work, for we too have a choice on what we will do and how we will respond to the challenges of our time. and our word? Will we respond in anger and violence, or with love and compassion? So let me leave you tonight with the last public words that Robert F. Kennedy ever spoke. I believe they are just as timely now as they were in June of 1968. I think we can end the divisions within the United States. What I think is quite clear is that we can work together. And what has been going on with the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or over the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together again. We are a great country, an unselfish country, and a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running over the period of the next few months. So my thanks to you, all of you, and it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Haddix. I'm a proud teacher at Heron High School, just down the street, and also a lead educator for the international curriculum Speak Truth to Power here in Indiana. Thank you, KKMI, for having me and the entire Speak Truth to Power Indy family and letting us be a part of your celebration today of Robert Kennedy's life here. Speak Truth to Power is an international curriculum that's sponsored through the Robert Kennedy Center for Human Rights, and we're dedicated at promoting the study and practice of human rights in classrooms around the world. Through this curriculum, students explore the lives of human rights defenders from across various countries, and they come face to face with injustice that many suffer in our country in our world still today. It is the hope of our organization and of my students that through the study of these defenders, students themselves can become ripples of hope in alleviating the suffering of others, living out the true legacy of Robert Kennedy and his mission for peace. I have the distinct honor today of introducing you to my Speak Truth to Power students at Heron High School. These 3 women, well, I have 2 women with me, one whom could not make it, but these women, young women, were asked by the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. to write our newest defender's curriculum, who happens to be Ruby Bridges. We're looking forward to finalizing and publishing and launching this curriculum in the fall of 2018. This is a major accomplishment for the 2 young women who are standing behind me and for our organization. I am so proud of each of these young women and our Speak Truth to Power program at Heron High School. Please help me in celebrating their work this year. Now, each of these women have become defenders of human rights themselves, each taking on a different passion of their liking and continuing the ripple of hope that spreads through our city of Indianapolis today. And they would like to share with you their story and what they defend.
It can be said that everyone has the potential to be a defender. They just need a spark to get them going. For me, that spark was Speak Truth to Power. Being able to see Ruby Bridges' impact helped me to truly understand the power that just one person's words and actions can have. This inspired me to take action against human trafficking. Together with my Human Rights Club at Heron High School, we were able to raise over $400 to protect and to save victims of such an awful crime. My name is Elena Fennell, and I am a defender of the right to childhood.
Speak Truth to Power is a name that describes itself. Through the research we all put into our work and the lesson plans we created, I learned all the mechanisms that go into preventing the equality of education for all students of any color, class, or creed. My eyes have been open to the injustices in the education system. My eyes have been open to the truth, and that alone is empowering. I believe with all my heart that we as students obtain the power to have our demands for an exceptional and equal education be heard. I believe that if our leaders hear our demands and begin putting as much effort into educating our low-class and minority students as they put into incarcerating and criminalizing them, our communities would have the power to thrive and flourish. I am Natalia Cepeda, and I am a defender of the voice of the students who will not settle for anything less than equal opportunities for a quality education.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, KKMI, and everyone have a beautiful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle indicated, she is the leader of the, sorry about Channel 6, sorry about that. She is the leader of STTV Indy, which helps spread the curriculum of Speak Truth to Power. I want to remind you, we are going to continue in the community room in the building right next door there at 16 Park Community Center for a reading of the short play Speak Truth to Power, taken from the Kerry Kennedy book. And you will enjoy this as you sit there and listen to this VIP list, as I said, of readers. The play is one in which you learn about and think about and get inspired about human rights activists in our country and around the world, many of whose work we're not aware, and many of whom we've never heard of. So I know you'll enjoy it, so we look forward to having you join us. Again, let me remind you that Kennedy King Memorial Initiative builds upon the events of April 4th, 1968. We raise awareness, we provoke thought, we inspire action, we educate youth and adults. We lead the community to think about the meaning of this unique Indianapolis history presently and also what it means for our future. And we feel that we're called to do remarkable things, and we feel like we are all called to do remarkable things, as Robert Kennedy told us to do. Called to responsibility to find common ground for the public good, and to build a safe harbor in which to discuss and resolve solutions and community issues. So, closing this part of the program, I'm going to call upon somebody who's a great community leader and who is the senior pastor at Light of the World Christian Church. So on Sunday, he saves souls, and on Monday, he goes to work in the city county building where I do, and many of us do, where he serves as the deputy mayor of neighborhood engagement. So please welcome Reverend Dr. David Hampton.
Thank you, Judge Dreyer. Thank you to Representative Porter. Thank our mayor and his continued leadership. It's my honor to provide some closing remarks. One of the great quotes of Robert F. Kennedy, he said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly will ever achieve greatly." And we do so every day. We wake up in the morning and we muster up the courage to strive. To try is not to fail. To not try is to fail. We do it every day. I see the mayor striving, trying. Each of you strive and try. We see behind me this wonderful statue and symbol and image of Dr. King reaching out, Robert F. Kennedy reaching out. Their hands are not touching because the work is not done. And so as we leave this place, we strive to eradicate poverty and food insecurity. We strive to address issues of mental health and criminal justice reform. We strive to, as our mayor has already eloquently given us the charge, to be one city. We're not done, but we're striving. We may fail along the way, but trying and striving is never failing, because if we continue on, we will achieve greatly. Thank you so much. God bless you.